Okay, so we're going to go ahead and start our video here on RStudio. Want to make sure that we have our RStudio open, that you've cleared out all of your previous data or pictures and data sets. We're going to go ahead and start from scratch. And so we're going to start by importing one of our data sets that they gave us. So we go over here to import dataset in our environment window, top right, from local file. This time around, we're going to go ahead and bring in the on-ramps data folder and use the student survey information. We click our open button, and then again what we're looking for is right here where it says heading, that it says yes, and we're going to go ahead and rename it right now to the name lowercase student, and then we go ahead and import. Okay, so before we do anything, we're going to go ahead and make sure that we are familiar with all our four windows and what they do here. The top left window is called the script window. It's also where you've loaded your data set. If you want to look at any individual values in the dataset, they'll be located here in the Student tab. Next to it, you should have an Untitled tab. At the bottom of the console window, we'll have all of your output or code that has been run. Over here on the right-hand side, you've got a couple of things. You've got 379 observations of 17 variables. What this is trying to tell you is that there's 379 people that have been asked 17 different questions. And so if you look at these questions and answers in here in the data set. Some of these have columns for classification, name letters, happy, concert, hair color. So some of these are categorical and some of these will be numerical. If you're ever curious about what they mean by name letters and happy and concerts, the place where you can find it is going to be in the bottom right hand window under the files and plot window here, under on-ramps data and the keys. It's important to have your key information up because this will tell you exactly what they're measuring in the columns and how they went about answering them. And so we're going to look for the one that says student survey right there. Student survey key CSV. I click it one time. It opens up another tab here, and in these tabs it has all of the individual column names and exactly what they were doing. And so if we looked at here the student tab, it talks about things like classification, name letters, and even though it's pretty self-obvious what name letters might mean, what we check here on the actual student survey key is name letter means, this is the question they asked them, how many letters are in your first name? It's the exact kind of information that the students were asked, and so that way we'll be able to tell specifically what their answers mean. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and look at our student data here. We've got some males, we've got some females, we've got some people of different ages, we've got some different classifications. We want to go ahead and start working on how to write some code using our student survey data. And so even though we already named it one time, I'm going to go ahead and rename it one more time. So remember, hashtag for all of our code. So we go here and we hit hashtag, it turns green. We're going to say we're going to rename our student data to, we're just going to name it Stu, S-T-U. We hit enter. Nothing happens because we're in the script window, and we're going to go ahead and start running our code. Since we want to call it Stu, we're going to call it STU, less than the little dash, and then it comes from the word student. Okay, and then again, remember here, we can either go ahead and highlight and hit the run button, and that will run both my codes at the bottom. Okay, and then here at the bottom will be the output for your code. It should return whatever you ran inside of the code in the first place. And so notice over here on the right hand side again, in the environment window, it talks about student and Stu. They have the exact same number of objects and the exact same number of variables. All we did was change the name. Okay, so we go back over here to our script window. We called it Stu. We're going to go ahead and do a little bit of vector play. We're going to take a single column that's inside of our data frame, inside of our spreadsheet, where you want to, whatever phrase you're comfortable with thinking about. But it's got different columns in here. I want to just generate one of the columns by itself. And so the difference between a vector and a data frame is data frames go up and down and left and right. And so we just want to use this age one. And so what we're going to do is we're going to write a hashtag. We're going to create a vector of just ages of Stu. And so we're going to call it age. Then we're going to do hashtag, or not hashtag, I'm sorry, less than and dash symbol. We're going to use the idea of what are we storing inside of this data frame. And so if you remember that our data frame, it has a full name and like a last name. The name of the entire column is has two parts to it. First of all, it's where it comes from. It comes from Stu. Okay, then we put a dollar sign. That will tell us which column do we want to use. Since we're talking about age, we're going to go right here to age and we're going to hit enter. Let's see if this works or not. So if we do here, we're going to highlight this code and we're going to run it. And so what should have happened is it took all the numbers here from Stu age and it stored them into a single vector of age. It's right here at the bottom right, or right in the right hand column. Over here in the environment window, there's something called age. It tells you that there are integers from 1 to 379, which we expected because over here we had 379 people. It is listing all of the numbers 17, 19, 18, 19, 19, 19 in order from the first one to the 379th one. We have created a vector, a single column out of the entire data frame. And so that's what this code here does. And so we're going to go ahead and do a little bit of interesting things with this idea of age. If I wanted to, I could find the average of the age. So I will hashtag find average age. Okay. And so I can find the average age of this by using the mean function. So we do mean, parentheses, AGE. That's where all our numbers are stored. Okay. We'll go ahead and highlight both these codes. And we run. Down here at the bottom right, bottom left, it has created the mean of my age. This is one way to go about finding the age of certain columns. And so we can store all the columns in their own individual vectors, and then from there be able to generate whatever we might need, whether it's a mean, a histogram, things of that nature. Now, we don't normally do this though because we like to be able to work with the entire data set at once rather than worrying about individual columns. And so those are just some of the functions that we've been talking about up to now. Okay, let's go to line 10 here. I'm going to skip a space. I want to start being able to subset my data. Well, we don't use vectors and individual columns very often. You want to be able to create entire new data frames from the ones inside. So what I mean by that is if we look at the word Stu, I'm going to go over here to the right hand side and we're going to click on the one that says Stu. It opens up another tab. Stu and student are both here. So that I don't get confused, I'm going to close the one that's called student. I'm not going to be using that one anymore. I'm just focusing on the one that's called Stu. Okay, so we look at this, we've got different information on here. I want to look at people that are just freshmen. And so if I look at this, they've got males, 17, freshmen, 4, 82, black. The column that I'm looking for says freshmen. It's this one right here. And so what I want to do is I want to create a data set. So hashtag or subset only freshmen. Okay. And so we're going to write a name for this. And so let's go ahead and call it fresh for freshmen. We can call it whatever we'd like. Less than or dash. And again, that little arrow means that we're saving it for something. And so the question is, what are we going to name it? Where's it coming from? I mean, we've named it fresh. The question is, where is it going to come from? And so if we're looking at the entire idea, it comes from the data frame STU. And it's right there. Okay, then we put the brackets. The reason we need the brackets, is that this is a data frame. It goes left and right and up and down. It has rows and it has columns. And so I'm going to need to be able to use the brackets whenever I'm talking about indexing for specific things. The difference between parentheses and brackets is parentheses are used for functions. It's when you want the calculator to, or the RStudio to actually either calculate something for you or do some kind of work, like create a table. Brackets are more for indexing, is where you want the computer to like try to find something for you. And so we're looking at this name here. And so this right here, if you look at it, the way Stu would work is that, let me go ahead and turn on my ink here. Where's my mouse? There it is. Stu. Stu has a idea. It should be rows. Oh, darn it. I can't see it. This isn't going to work if I can't see it. Let's go ahead and try it. Rows and columns. And so you want to be able to create the idea of which row you want. Okay, there it is. And so what you want here is that you have a row and you have a column. You are telling the dataset to look at every row one by one by one by one by one. It's going to go row by row. You're going to tell it what to look for. And so let me clear my data here. If I'm looking at the stew, what do you want for it to be looking for? And so we want it to be looking for the word freshman. As it's going from row by row, it's going to be looking for the word freshman. And so as it's going, up and down on the rows here, the one that it wants to focus on is you need to have it focus on this column. The name of this column is classification. Forgive my handwriting. I can't even spell. Okay, classification. But just like you have a first name and a last name, this column has a full name. The individual column is named classification, but where it comes from is the DataFrame stew. It's the DataFrame stew, then we put the $, classification. That is the entire name of that column. Every column has a complete and full name. So to change colors here for a second, this one is called Greek. The name of this column would be STUT, because it comes from the DataFrame stew, but specifically it's STU $lowercase Greek. That is the full name of this column. The reason we need to be specific is this one is called stew $Greek. The computer has another one, student. It also has a column called Greek. And even though they're the same for you and me, the computer thinks of them as two separate things. You need to be able to specify the entire full name of the column. Okay, so let me go ahead and erase this. And so we want to use the entire name of this column, because we want the computer to be looking at this column as it goes row by row by row. So what you're telling the computer is, please, as you're going row by row by row, I want you to be looking for the word column. Let's go over here. And so what you're telling the computer is, please go to this column that is named stew $classification. You're telling it to look here. Now the question is, what are you telling it to look for? We're going to tell it equal, please look for the word freshman. You want to make sure that the word freshman here matches the way the word freshman is spelled here with a capital F. If I don't put the capital F, it will give me a very different answer. So we're going to go ahead and just show you. And put a lowercase f. Once you're done putting your words in your quotation marks, we put a comma, and then we close our brackets. The reason we need a comma, is that this is supposed to be stew bracket rows column. Okay? You've already told it which rows to use. You want to use the rows that are here. In terms of columns, if you leave this blank, you're telling the computer, please use all of the rest of the columns. And so we're telling the computer that while I want them to be freshmen, I'm interested in everything about the freshmen, all the columns. If I put something here specifically, it will get rid of all of the freshmen, all the ones that aren't freshmen, and use this specific column. If I don't tell it which column to use, it will use all of the columns. So let's go ahead and erase this. Okay. And so let's run this code and see what happens. Control. You'll notice that it made a data set down here in the bottom left window. But in the top right window over here, you'll see that it says fresh, 0 observations. That's different than the 379. It still has 17 variables. If I click on it, you'll see that it has all the same columns that the other one had. The problem is there's no data here. And the reason there is no data is what it did is it went row by row by row right here, and it looked for the word freshman. And whereas you and me, we would understand what we were trying to talk to someone about, the computer does not understand the difference between a lowercase and a uppercase. Or it does understand, I'm sorry. It doesn't realize that you mean the same thing. For the computer, those are two separate things. A lowercase f and a capital F are two separate things to the computer. So it looked for the word freshman, lowercase, and it didn't find any. That's why it says 0. I need to go back here and change this to a capital F. If I run this code now, it will tell me there are 184 freshmen. This is how we begin to subset our data. I'll go ahead and run the code for some of the other classifications. So subset, let's do for sophomores. If I was only doing sophomores, I can't spell, I would call them, let's call them soph. Save. And so we want the original data. The original data was called stu. Bracket, stu, $, classification. This time we want equals equals, quotation marks, capital S, sophomore, with a comma, and then we run. Right hand corner, fresh and soph. This is telling me there's 184 freshmen, 123 sophomores. Okay. And so this is how you begin to subset data. This will conclude the first of our videos. If I can figure out how to turn this off. There it is.